Welcome back to the Bioinformatics module. In this chapter, we are going to talk about databases, networks, and software tools. So what are databases? Database is a collection of information stored in computer that can be easily accessed and manipulated. It is also an electronic filing system. In the context of bioinformatics, we call these biological databases because they store biological data obtained from experiment. In general, we store, share, and manage large volumes of biological data, meaning that we store the experimental data, we maintain the data in the database, we enter new data into the database, we can also search the existing data, we can sort them as we wish, and then we can also retrieve the information and analyze them. After that, we also need the software to help us to present and display the data. It is important that the database support large-scale analysis. The data can be easily uploaded and accessed. It is also important that the database can link knowledge obtained from various fields. There are a few terminologies related to database that you must know. First of all, field. Field is a particular data about a person or a thing stored in the database. Usually the field is the column of a particular table in the database. Field type and attribute refers to the property of the data, meaning that what kind of data is being stored in the database. For example, it can be a strings of alphabets. It can be numerical data. When the numbers are integer, we just call it integer. If the number has decimal place, we call it a float. It can also be date and other type of data. A record or entry is a set of fields in a particular table which is relevant to a specific entity. Usually it is arranged as the rows of the table. Primary key is also called the unique identifier of a record. It is also a field that is unique to this particular record. Secondary key is a field which is used to link other tables in a particular database together. A relational database is in fact a complex database which has many tables and they are linked by different secondary keys in different tables. Let's take a look at an example. This is a simple relational database which has two tables. A table that contains the patient information and also another table containing the information about the blood cholesterol of each person measured at a specific date. In the patient's information table, down the column you have name, NRIC, gender, and treatment. Each column represents a field, and the field name is the header of each column. From the second row onwards, each row represents a record which is related to a particular person. If you look at the blood cholesterol table, you will notice that each column in fact have a different type of data. For example, in the NRIC field, the data is alphanumeric, whereas the date of treatment is entered as a date. For blood cholesterol, at this moment, it is entered as an integer. It is important to note that computer can only perform certain manipulation of data given a particular field type. For example, arithmetic operation can only be done with integer or float. Date can also be used as a calculated field, but strings like alphanumeric information cannot be used to perform numerical calculations. If you take a look at the patient table, there are a number of fields: name, NRIC, gender, and treatment. Which field do you think is appropriate to be used as a primary key? In this table, you may notice that the name of a particular person can be duplicated. Hence, it is not a suitable field to be used as a primary key, whereas the NRIC is unique to every particular person. Therefore, it is the unique identifier of this particular table and should be considered to be used as a primary key. At the same time, the NRIC is also a secondary key which is used to link up the second table, the blood cholesterol table. And each entry in the blood cholesterol table is used with the NRIC as a primary identifier for this table, and the NRIC field of both tables link up the two tables together. If a database like this one has more than one table and they are related to each other and linked by secondary keys, and this whole database is considered as a relational database. Different databases store different information. For example, bibliography database store literature, taxonomy databases store classification, nucleic acid databases store DNA information, mostly DNA sequence. Genomic databases store genome information. And protein databases store protein information, and so on and so forth. This is the list of examples of different databases. You do not need to remember the URL link of all these databases, but you should be able to name an example of each different types of database. For example, in the bibliography database, PubMed is the most commonly used database. ScienceDirect is another commonly used database. For taxonomy databases, there is one taxonomy database provided by NCBI. For nucleic acid database, one of the most commonly used database is called GenBank, also provided by NCBI. This is the list for gene databases. The RefSeq database from NCBI store reference sequences of different genes for different organisms. For genome databases, these databases store genome information. Commonly used databases include Ensembl and UCSC Genome Browser. Other databases store information about the binding sites and promoters of genes also. There are many protein databases, including Interpro, Swissplot. Some databases store protein motifs and domain information. The other store protein structure information derived from nuclear magnetic resonance or X-ray crystallography. There are also databases store disease information. As you can see here, many databases are actually interconnected and they share information from one another. One of such example is called OnTrees from NCBI. It is an aggregate of many databases provided by NCBI. You can search and retrieve many different sequences, information, literature, and so on. There are a few major integrated databases like NCBI. NCBI is hosted in Europe. The other is EMBL, which is located in Europe. And finally, Japan also hosts an integrated database. Even though these integrated databases are separated by geographical location, but in fact they are also interconnected. As we go through the example, you may have already realized that there are many different databases of different types and they store different kinds of data. In primary database, these databases store experimental data directly. In secondary databases, these databases store the results of the analysis of primary database. For example, curated and annotated sequences, structures and functional motifs of protein. Finally, composite database is database that aggregates many different databases. They interlinks the data from different databases and OnTrees from NCBI is one of the examples. These are some examples of primary databases. For nucleic acid database, GenBank, EMBO, these are the primary nucleic acid database. For protein, people store protein information in Swissplot. In summary, biological databases represent an invaluable resource in supporting biological research. We can learn much about a particular molecule by searching databases and using the available analysis tools. There are many databases for this particular task. Some databases are more general than the other, while some are more specialized. So for the best results, we often need to access many different databases. The major types of databases covered in this module generally focus on nucleotide, protein structure, pathway, molecular interaction, protein motifs, publication means literature, and other specialized databases. You can search a database by keywords, by sequence similarity, by motif, or by class searching. In the later part of this module, you will learn how to search database based on sequence similarity, motif, and other. Even though databases are very useful, but they are not problem-free. Some of these problems include incomplete information, the data spread over many different databases, redundant information, errors, sometimes even missing links, and constant change of the website. Usually computer scientists, they will also build a retrieval system which helps the extraction of the information in multiple databases so that users will find it easier to use. However, formulating queries is still a serious issue in biological databases. Finally, accessing to biological database is nowadays so important. Virtually all biological projects start and end with querying biological databases.